What if I told you that you could own a business without paying a single penny up front? Sounds crazy, right? Well, it is actually happening right now, and here's how. This video is aimed more at those of you who consider yourselves entrepreneurial and looking for business or investment opportunities. So it might be that a lot of you have already invested some of your savings into stocks or crypto, or perhaps even into bigger things such as property. But you might be thinking that the real way to be financially independent and make lots of money is to be your own boss and have your own business. And naturally, what most people do next is to sit down and rack their brains, trying their best to think of that one amazing idea. And once they get it, to then start down that very, very long road, starting a company from scratch. However, this might not be the best approach for everyone. An alternative popular opinion is to, rather than starting your own company from scratch, is to instead purchase and take over an existing company. And this idea has already been made very popular by other YouTubers such as Cody Sanchez, Daniel Priestley, and many others. And the message that's been driven home here is that essentially you try and buy a small business, let's say with 10 employees or so, and perhaps a revenue of 1 million yearly, as opposed to you trying to buy a multi-million dollar company with hundreds, if not thousands of employees, which ultimately the majority of people would not be able to afford this anyway. Okay, so the first obvious question to ask would be, well, how much will it cost to buy a business like this? And the answer is that in some scenarios, it can actually cost you nothing, or at least very little. But there are a few caveats to this, and I will touch upon it later in this video, so stay tuned. So before I continue with the purchasing part of this equation, let's talk about the model. And the idea is, let's say you take over a company making per year 200,000 profit. And what you'll be aiming to do as CEO is improve the way the company works. Or perhaps it might be you bringing in people that you trust who you know will do a good job. With the output being that hopefully you'll be able to 2 or 3x that profit within a few years. Because think about this, let's say in 3, 4, 5 years, you manage to turn that 200k into 600k. Well, in how many jobs out there could you increase your salary from 200k to 600k in 3, 4, 5 years? I think very, very few. And at that point, what you then do is sell that company for a lot more than what you bought it for. And then simply rinse and repeat this process with a different company. And the best bit about this model is that you are missing out the hardest bit of most businesses, which is starting out. As when starting out, you have to do all the initial hard marketing and also trying to gain a client base. Whereas in theory, in this scenario, you'll be taking over a company which already has a regular income stream and also regular clients. Okay, so naturally a follow-up question could be, well, what makes you think that I have the skill set to 2 or 3x this company when the previous owner couldn't do it themselves? And this point here, I believe, is something which many of these YouTubers, on purpose probably, gloss over. The reality is, it might not be for you. You might not have the skill set to improve these companies. You might not have the connections to help you improve those companies, which might actually mean that instead, you would get this company and make it worse and decrease the profits. So how can we reduce this scenario? Well, this is where the conversations around boomer businesses come in. These are companies associated with the baby boomers generation, so from the 1946 to 1964, and often portray businesses which are outdated, perhaps even declining, and simply out of touch with new technology. And perhaps because they've done things a certain way for many, many years. Some examples of these might be a local laundromat, a local small car dealership, could be a car wash, could be a gift shop. But the important point here is that for all these businesses, the owners will be roughly between the ages of say 60 and 78, which means that most likely they are looking to retire. So if we go back to that question beforehand where we discussed, well, how might we 3x this company? Well, let's say if your expertise was, let's say, digital marketing. Well, it might be that in this scenario with the car dealership or car wash, they might be doing all their advertising via local newspapers or local magazines. So at this point, you, with your expertise, might be able to make some online ads which might get therefore 3 times more views and therefore 3 times more buys and 3 times more profits. It could be that instead you simply have great connections in the car industry, in which case you come in, bring your connections, and now you make more sales. Or a last example could be that you are, let's say, a software engineer, and you can create some online software which helps speed up the internal processes in that business. So if you now introduce this software, it might be that it can be done 3 times as fast, and therefore you can do 3 times more calls per day for sales. And with that logic, you might end up getting 3 times more profit. So the point here is you have to look at your skill set and look at the local businesses around you and see if your skill set can be put to good use. Because it might be that your skill set has already been put into good use, or simply your skill set is just not relevant to those companies. In which case, this whole model might not be for you. Unless, of course, your skill set is having connections and you have someone else in mind who has got that skill set. So naturally, you might ask, well, surely these companies will have adapted with the times too. Well, a lot don't, because they might just simply be family businesses and they are quite comfortable with their current lifestyle and ways of doing things. And then a second good question would be, well, surely these people retiring would pass down their companies to their children or family, especially considering they're making good profits per year. But here, you're assuming that children and family want to take over the business and haven't got their own lives. So often, actually, they just want to sell the business, get the money, get rid of the stress, and pass on that money at a later date. Okay, so let's touch again on the finances. So I said earlier that you might be able to get these businesses for free, or at least for little cost. And this is down to seller financing. So essentially, where you agree with the seller to pay nothing up front and pay it over a certain number of years. So it could be, for example, over 3 years where you pay them back with the profits that you're making from that company. So as an example, let's say that the company is being sold for 600,000, but it makes per year 200,000 profits. So over 3 years, you've paid 200, 200, 200, and after those 3 years, you have now fully paid back the seller, which would mean that by year 4, that 200k profit is all yours. So think about it. In just 3 years, you can now make 200k profits every single year after that. Not bad at all. And if you're confident that after 1 year with your skill set, you can 2x the company, well, right there, you can pay the person back in 2 years, not 3. Even better. Okay, and here's another example where it's not free, but still much cheaper. So again, let's assume that the seller wants 600k for their business, but they agree that they'll accept 150k upfront and you can pay back 450 over 3 years. But now, with that 150 that you owe the seller, let's say you only have 50k in your bank. With that 50k, you can now borrow a loan from your bank for the remaining 100k. So now at that point, you then give the 150k to the seller, you get now the business, and if you recall, in this business, it made 200k per year. So therefore, every single year, you pay the 150k to the seller. You now have 50k profit left over, which you can now pay for the repayments on the 100k loan which you took out. In this scenario, with 50k of your money, you got a 600k business. Right, so as you can see with these examples, you got a £600,000 business for either free or let's say 50k. Now, I think here is the main caveat and drawback to this method which all these YouTubers keep talking about. It's obviously in the incentive of the seller to not give you finance. They want to have the money up front for themselves. So for them to do this, they have to be a bit desperate. And it might be because they've been trying to sell for a long time and aren't being successful. Or perhaps even worse, that a company has been declining and making less profits every year and they want to get rid of it. This is very dangerous, as you absolutely don't want to owe the seller all this money just for your profits to go down and now you can't pay them back. For this scenario, you'd have to really back your skill set to take a declining company to make 2-3x, and most likely it's very risky. So I would not advise that. So what does this mean for your seller finance? Well, it means that if you have found this business which you like and it looks to be doing very well, the chances are that it's getting a lot of attention from other buyers and it can sell pretty quickly, at which point they're not going to offer you any finance if they can get the whole lump sum from someone else. And just remember, it's a risk to the seller too offering this finance. They need to be confident that you can keep the company doing well. So that's where if the likes of Cody Sanchez or Daniel Priestley ask for this seller finance, they'll probably get it because they have a proven track record of doing this with many companies. Or even, for example, Cody Sanchez, when she started out with her first business, well, she had many years working as, I think, an investment banker. So they've had experience doing these kind of things. So if you have no experience with finance or running a company, it's going to be a lot harder to convince the seller that your skill set and changes to the company will actually work. Which is actually why also being a great salesman is a very key skill to have. And I'll be doing a video about that soon. However, a plus side is that the statistics show that this year alone in the USA, there were, I think, over 100,000 businesses which wanted to sell but couldn't, given the sheer volume. So hopefully that will increase the number of good companies which you can find, which will tick all your boxes with your skill sets. And also because they might be desperate to sell, you might be able to get that seller finance. And of course, if you already have lots of money, then you can just buy it outright and start that model. So, in a nutshell, the whole point of this process was to be able to get rid of the hard bit of any company, which is the starting out. And then if you can pinpoint a skill set you have, which you can see will be useful in a certain company, then you take it on. And hopefully with the right company, you might be able to get your seller finance. And then finally, you rinse and repeat this model of buying a business, 3-4 years down the line, improving it, selling it, and repeat. And as a final point, just remember that it is not linear when comparing the profits per year to the sell price. So as an example, it might be that a company that makes per year $1 million might sell for $4 million, a 4x. But it might be that if you increase that profit to $3 million per year, it won't give you 12 mil, 4x. It might give you, say, 2021, a 7x. That often happens. So if you think you can improve a company's profits, you will reap the rewards. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and bell notification. Feel free to leave any comments and any suggestions for future content. And as ever, onwards and upwards.